All right, welcome along to the RTÉ Soccer Podcast. Raf Diallo here. We're getting closer to the end of the year, but there's still some big things on the horizon for Irish football, namely the Women's Euro 2025 playoff tie against Wales. Plus, the boys in green know who they're facing in the Nations League playoff in March. We're going to chat about all that and a couple of LOI-related matters. And of course, you can listen or watch on RT.ie, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. So I'm joined by former Ireland international Méabh De Búrca and former UCD Shamrock Rovers and Sheffield Wednesday midfielder Paul Corry. Hope you're both keeping very well.
All good.
Yeah, and I suppose, Maeve, the last time you were on, I think the last question I asked you was whether you'd prefer Wales or Slovakia in the playoff. But I think the lesson in life is you don't always get what you want.
Exactly, that's it. Yeah, so we're up against Wales. Unfortunately, I would have preferred Slovakia, like I said, but I think it's going to be a challenge definitely for the girls. But I think it's one that hopefully they can overcome, and I think it's going to be a really tight game. I think regardless. And then obviously the two-legged game and having the home leg, I think the second leg at home, I think hopefully will be an advantage to us.
Yeah, because of course the first leg is this Friday, so it's going to be live on RT2 and the RT player in terms of TV from 6:30 in terms of coverage, and then game on RT2 FM for radio as well. So that's a 7:15 p.m. kickoff at Cardiff City Stadium, and then we'll also have the second leg, which is next Tuesday, 7:30 at the Aviva Stadium, which probably makes a bit of a difference. As you said, Maeve, the fact that the second leg is at home, did you feel the Aviva is going to be a huge factor as well? Just I suppose the scale, the size of the stadium, and the expected crowd as well.
Yeah, I think so. Even I think last week the figure was said that over 15,000 was sold. So I'm sure that'll pick up even more this week. And I think that's going to be a huge factor because it's just going to be such a big occasion that the girls are used to playing there. That's the main thing. Obviously the last game wasn't in the Aviva, but they're used to the big occasion now. So I don't think that's going to be something that will overawe them or that. And obviously they've already qualified for the major tournament, whereas Wales, I think, might come into it with a bit less kind of experience, and hopefully then the girls can use that and it would be great just to qualify for a second major tournament in a row to build off that success of the World Cup and having it in Switzerland and stuff. I think as well there'll be a lot more publicity. The timing of the games will suit girls better, people in Ireland better, and also then will allow for, I think, big travelling and support. But I suppose getting away with ourselves there, we have to focus and get the job done starting on Friday.
Yeah, and obviously the squad that's been named, the vast majority of the core players are there, but there's a huge amount of experience coming back in as well, isn't there? I suppose only Louise Quinn, really, of those that were out previously, is probably the only one that's going to be missing.
That's it. Yeah, you've got the two Megans back, so Megan Connolly and Megan Campbell will be back, and Rusha Littlejohn as well. And like you mentioned, I think the three of them just bring such experience. Megan at the back with hopefully her long throwing might become something that we need to use throughout the two legs, and then Megan Connolly just brings that experience as well in as well as obviously Rusha Littlejohn. She's come back from injury, so I'm not sure how big a part she can play, but at the same time, even just to have her around the camp, I think will be a really big addition.
Yeah, and last time Ireland plays Wales was actually this year as well in a friendly, Paul, and it was a 2-0 defeat for Ireland, which was, at that stage was coming off a very good run of form in League B of the Nations League, and then this was a little, I suppose, a reminder of, just kind of maintaining standards. But the one player who was missing that day, Denise O'Sullivan, wasn't part of that squad through injury, and there's definitely something missing from an Irish midfield point of view when she's not there, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely, and she's the link, Raf. When you think about somebody who connects the play between, say, your back four and your forward players, she's somebody who looks to kind of get on the ball and help dictate the speed of the game and try to be a creative force when you get up to the final third. And I think the likes of a Denise and the experienced players that you mentioned there are so important over a two-legged affair like this against Wales. I think you really want to be leaning on players who've kind of been involved in scenarios like this before and understand, I guess, how to navigate difficult situations. And I think the likes of Denise will be vital over the course of the two legs. And to Maeve's point, I think being away from home probably suits us, and it's those experienced players who might be maybe just kind of help set up shop and be difficult to play against and difficult to beat when away from home. And then if you take it back to the Aviva next week and you're on level terms, I think you really fancy Eileen Gleeson side to get over the line. But yeah, you're right. It's, your experienced players, the likes of Denise, your likes of Katie McCabe, the likes of players who've played in situations like this before are so pivotal. And maybe that game against Wales last year when they were beaten might actually help, because it mentally prepares yourself that we can't actually take our foot off the gas here. We've been overturned previously, albeit in a friendly, but Wales definitely have capabilities and they have potential to to counter any, I guess, sort of poor performances. So I would imagine there's unbelievable focus within that camp this week, and I'm sure that every preparation that is needed will be taken to ensure that the girls are in a good position when they take to the pitch on Friday night. But the likes of Denise O'Sullivan, the likes of Katie McCabe, we always talk about them, but the reason we talk about them is because they've showed up in big occasions previously, and you would hope to expect that over the course of the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, we'll look at Wales very closely and a couple of their key players as well, Maeve. But before that, just in terms of how Ireland are going to set up, I think we kind of generally know the system. But the only thing is, what do you expect from the midfield composition? Do you expect a 4 in that first leg just to be more structured, or do you think someone like a Julianne Russell will be in there beside Ciara Carusa?
Yeah, I think they'll actually stick with it. Yeah, two up top, like has been working for them, and I think the likes of Julianne, partnered with Carusa, I think it's just a good combination because they can kind of they're different styles of players. I think up front, and I think they're going to stick kind of more the tried and tested over the last. With the Georgia game and coming into this, because they obviously had to adapt when they're playing the stronger teams. But I think they'll look to hopefully, possess the ball more and I think they'll look to dominate the possession. Obviously not to the extent that they did in the Georgia games. Just wouldn't be realistic to go in with that kind of game plan. But at the same time, Wales will be hard to break down, I think. But yeah, definitely, I think it was stick to tried and test. And then Courtney Brosnan, I think is going to be massive as well for them. She did pull off the penalty save back to get us to I know we all talk about Emma Barrett's goal, but she did make that penalty save against Caroline Weir when we beat Scotland too. So I think she's going to be vital. She picked up in the PFI Player of the Year as well for Ireland. So yeah, it's just going to be exciting to see. But I think just stick to what we know, and I think Julianne could play a big part too.
Yeah, and from the Wales point of view, so they were unbeaten in their League B qualifying group, winning 4 and drawing 2, which were both against Ukraine in that group, and they also had Croatia and Kosovo on a +15 goal difference. So at League B level, at least, they were very potent. But the one thing that was very noticeable is their set piece threat, Maeve, and I think even in that game that Ireland lost in February against Wales, that was very apparent in the first goal that they scored as well.
Yeah, it was, and I think maybe, I don't know, a lot of things went wrong, I think, for us that day as well. And even I think, the other goal then was a combination of their fullbacks combining too. So I think we'll definitely try to negate that threat both from set pieces. I think in general, we are quite a strong nation, and men's and women's at set pieces. So I'm sure, like Paul was saying, in relation to the preparation, that there will be a huge focus on that. And in international football rather than even club football, there's more goals scored from set pieces. So it's definitely a huge area that they'll need to focus on, and it's not something that we can't concede sloppy goals from set pieces for sure. But also, like I said, that threat down the wings, I think, with their fullbacks pushing on, I think that's something that we're not going to want to let happen. So I'd expect that we'll try to kind of target that area too, to try to tighten up on the wings.
Yeah, and Jess Fishlock, I think, is the player. If we're, as Paul has outlined, Denise Sullivan, Katie McCabe, we put a lot of spotlight on them. I think from the Wales point of view, Jess Fishlock seems to be the one, but at 37 as well, she's probably closer to the end. She wears the number 10 shirt. She scored that first goal I was referencing in Tala as well. What is it about her over her career that's made her so special, and why she's still a bit of a threat?
Yeah, it's wild to think, at that age that she's, still shining so brightly, I suppose, for them. And she did really run the show that night in Tala. She just was everywhere, and just found it really hard to negate her impact on the game. And for sure, she's going to be one to target. But I think she's just I think her technique on the ball as well, that's something that stands out. She's a playmaker, and there's, I suppose, in the women's game there isn't as many that we would have seen. It's a lot of, I think, girls growing up playing street football. We have the likes of Denise, like we already mentioned. She would be a similar player in that her technique is so good. And when Jess is on the ball, it's hard to, she kind of can fake, and she can do a lot of things that it is hard to, even though at her age, you would expect her to be slowing down. But I think she's kind of adapted her game over the years as well to be able to still make that impact. And it's definitely, I think we're going to have to pay her a lot of attention.
Yeah, especially early on in games. So she scored 7 goals in this calendar year, ostensibly from midfield, but sometimes kind of playing up front or close to it, and happened to score in very early goals. So in Tala, that was after 7 minutes, and then the Croatia home game scored in the 4th minute, Croatia away the 14th minute, and Kosovo at home the 8th minute. So generally, you don't want to be asleep in the first few minutes when she's around. The other player as well, who was quite prolific during the League B Nations League campaign for Wales, Kayleigh Barton. What's she like as a player?
Yeah, she's impressive too, I suppose, and one just to try to stop as well. And I think more, I suppose, from a positive perspective in terms of they're missing, well, from an Irish positive perspective, they are missing their captain Sophie Ingle as well. She did her ACL recently, so she'll be out, and I think she's such an important player for them too. I think that will hopefully stand to us in that it may take away some of that experience, and that we can try to use that to our advantage, I suppose.
Yeah, and if you were to, I suppose, call it over the first leg at least, in terms of again, predictions are kind of a pointless thing because they're hard to nail down. But if you were to see it, what would you kind of expect in terms of scoreline?
I'd hope that we'd be able to take the advantage back to the Aviva. Like, although we are similarly ranked, and that I think that we still would see ourselves as a better team than Wales, and that's not been overconfident. That's just, I suppose, the standards now that the girls have set down for themselves, and ones that they won't want to drop them standards. And I hope that, I think a clean sheet will be really important massively, and I would hope that we could get a goal or two past them. Not necessarily a prediction, but hopefully, like I said, that we could get the win, a narrow win even on Friday. That would be huge, to get us through then to set up a really exciting game then in the Aviva.
Yeah, and Paul, I suppose on the flip side as well, as this is going on in terms of the build-up, what's happening on the pitch, Eileen Gleeson's future is also subject of uncertainty, because again, there hasn't been any concrete talk about a contract extension, and obviously this is something I think that they would want to avoid given what's happened previously.
Yeah, I can understand it, to be honest with you, Raf. I think, if you think of what would have been expected of Eileen would be to qualify for another finals, and I'm sure she would have been of the understanding of that when she took the job. I mean, the Nations League campaign was great to see the stamp that she put on the side, but at the same time, we weren't really competing against nations who you would expect to maybe drop points off in competitive games. I did like the qualifying campaign. I know we maybe didn't amass a huge amount of points, but I actually thought the performances and the confidence grew within the side over the course of those 6 games, and you can really start to see the small little tweaks from Vera to Eileen. But ultimately, it comes down to results, and it comes down to qualification for major competitions. And a lot of what the FAI maybe see going forward will depend on whether or not Eileen is able to get the squad over the line over the next 2 games. And if she qualifies for another competition while putting her own little stamp on it, you can then maybe put your hand up and say, okay, now is the time to start looking at planning for the future with Eileen as the person who's going to take the team forward. But unless she gets over the line, I think there will be still a couple of questions that will be asked, given kind of the quality that we have within the squad. So I can understand it. I think it makes sense to just see what happens over these next 2 games. And to Maeve's point, I think we are favourites heading into this. I think we can go in with an element of confidence, and I think we should get over the line. So yeah, listen, I can understand from Eileen's perspective, she wants to have a little bit of confidence in knowing that she's going to be the person to take the squad forward. But I also think the FAI are right to maybe just see how things meander over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I suppose, Maeve, just your view on that as well. Would you, like, Eileen Gleeson obviously wants to stay, but do you think she should stay on board regardless of what happens in this tie, basically?
Yeah, it's hard to know, but I think, like, she has done as best she can with the team. I don't think I think really that Wales the loss is probably the one major blemish on the record. Like, otherwise, I think we've beaten the teams that we're meant to have beaten, and we've lost against the teams that were meant to have lost against, of course, barring that amazing win against France down in Porky Queeve. So I think that would definitely stand to her. I mean, that was the best result I think that we've ever gotten in a competitive game. So I don't think there is much, I suppose. Yeah, I think that she probably will stay on. I'm not sure. It is hard to know. I mean, it's up to the powers that be and those who are making those decisions. But I don't think, even if we were to lose against Wales, I can see her contract probably not been extended. it's hard to call, but I think that she probably will stay in the position going forward.
Yeah, and of course, first leg against Wales this Friday, live on RT2, RT Player, and then also on Game On as well. And last week as well, the Men's Nations League playoff draw was made, and Bulgaria, who were ranked 84th in the world, and even though our ranking has fallen considerably in the men's game, where we are above them, so we avoided Kosovo, Armenia, and Slovakia. And Hamer Hallgrimsson described it as an okay draw. Let's just listen to him before we discuss further.
Bulgaria is I would say okay draw. It was not my favorite, and it was not the worst. I think Slovakia was the highest FIFA ranked team. Probably everybody liked to avoid them, but yeah, it's probably going to be an equal game, like most of these setups. They were in group with Northern Ireland, if I remember correctly. They lost 5-1 in Belfast, but that is kind of an outlier in all their results. They had 4 clean sheets in that group, and somebody told me Ireland had them in the group in 220, so I think there was 2 draws. It's 1-1 away and 0-0 home, or the opposite. I don't remember. So you would expect a low scoring game when you look at, their goals and statistics.
Expect a low scoring game. Still buy tickets, and obviously do watch the game side as well. Don't let that put you off. But anyway, we've had, like the women's playoff, we're going to have home advantage for the second leg, and then the first leg is going to be in Plovdiv apparently, and not in Sofia, the Bulgarian capital. But Paul, your reaction when you first heard that it was Bulgaria that we'd drawn?
He was really selling it there, Heimer, wasn't he?
Very much so.
Yeah. I thought it was always going to be a difficult game, irrespective of who we drew, Raf, and that's purely on the basis of how we're playing at the moment. We're not playing with a huge amount of confidence or consistency within our performances. So I think, irrespective of whatever side we got, it's always going to be a challenge. I don't think we're going to show up to any team and kind of wipe them away over the course of 2 legs. So it'll be a good test. I think it's a good test for the squad to have, as it's another chance, I guess, for the management to kind of put his fingerprints on the team before we head into competitive qualifiers next year. So it's a good game to have. I think it's going to be highly competitive. I don't think there's going to be a situation, like I mentioned, where we're totally dominant within the course of the 2 legs. Like you mentioned there, that Northern Ireland beat them 5-0 when they played them up in Belfast. And maybe that's a bit of confidence you can take when you look at the resources that they have, Northern Ireland, compared to ourselves. We're probably not too far kind of from a standards perspective, but their other results have been relatively okay. Beat Luxembourg away from home, drew at Luxembourg at home. We've struggled against that sort of caliber over recent years as well. So it'll be tough. I would like to think over the course of 2 legs, particularly given that we're at home in the second, that we should have enough to kind of get over the line. But the results, yes, are important, but I think it's time spent with the manager and time spent together as a group is probably important over the next couple of weeks and months, and those competitive games, to try get a little bit further along the line as to what Heimer actually wants. And albeit the result was desperate against England, and we went down very easily when we conceded the first goal, I think if you could look to build on particularly that first half, and maybe some of the glimpses that we've shown in the 2 games against Finland, you can start to piece together kind of what this team is going to look like and who the players are going to be involved. So Bulgaria is another opportunity. I think it would be important to stay in League B if we could, and hopefully the squad has enough to beat Bulgaria. If they were to lose, Raf, over those course of 2 legs, I think that would be kind of alarming. Not because we've been moving down to League C, but purely on the basis of confidence within that squad.
Yeah, it would be a worry, because Bulgaria, I think, we did play. I do remember the games in 2020. I think we're looking at them. They're not great shakes. They're probably looking at us, and it's the exact same feeling. And it feels like such a long time ago when they would have had like a Berbatov, or even you go back further in the 90s, where, like us, they were quite strong with the Stoichkovs and Balakovs and Konstantinovs and all those type of players. But you touched on something there that I was going to ask, which was, do you feel like relegation to League C, like the actually losing a tie to Bulgaria, as you say, would probably be hugely alarming, given the level Bulgaria are at as well? But would would spending a one edition of the Nations League and League C be the end of the world? Because some teams like the likes of Greece have rebuilt at that level and then kind of come back up, and Northern Ireland even have used it as a bit of a springboard.
Yeah, and certain nations like England dropped down to League B, and maybe that was because they took their foot off the gas when they were in League A for a period of time. I think what would worry me, Raf, is just the course of the last 24 months has been nothing but defeats for this squad. And I think the more you continue to lose, I think more that is detrimental to the squad and the confidence of the players and the group. I think it's important that we start to win games and competitive games when they matter. So I understand the flip side of that, where people would say, okay, let's get down to League C. Let's win a couple of games. Let's try progress and build some confidence and use that as our platform to maybe qualify for major competition. Like the Nations League has been brilliant for the likes of Macedonia and co, who've maybe used Nations League to get to a major competitions. I would just be worried about the squad and losing too many games against teams who are kind of in and around our weight division and what sort of effect that could have on the squad. And let's be brutally honest about it, Raf. If we go down to League C, and you look at some of the nations in there's no guarantee that we're going to start winning groups at League C either. Like if you looked at that group, I mentioned like Luxembourg, Bulgaria, Northern Ireland, I wouldn't be convinced if we were in a group with those teams that we would finish on top of that. So yeah, it's not the end of the world if we don't win over the course of two legs, and there are opportunities that come with maybe dropping down a division. But I think Hallgrimsson in particular will want to start winning games, and it was important to win against Finland. I think it'd be important to win against Bulgaria so that you carry some bit of momentum into the World Cup qualifiers when they come around.
Yeah, you'd even have to worry about teams like San Marino, like winning games in League D or winning games for the first time as well, and like getting promoted. But obviously, look, I'm obviously being very glib there as well. The seedings for the World Cup draw as well are available as well, and the draw for the 2026 World Cup qualifiers in UEFA, 13th of December. We're going to be in pot 3, and we're going to be drawn against one of the teams playing in the Nations League semi-finals in June. So as the top 4 from League A are guaranteed to be in a 14 group, and the teams playing in those quarterfinals for this newly revamped sort of final stages of the Nations League A. So Netherlands against Spain, so we'll get one of them. Croatia and France, Denmark or Portugal, Italy or Germany. So one of the 4 winners basically will end up in our pot, because we'll be in a 14 group. And then even pot 2, you know, you've Ukraine, Sweden, Turkey, Wales, Hungary, Serbia, Poland, Greece, Romania, Slovakia, Czech Republic, Norway, Paul. I mean, you go through all of those, even like Norway, maybe as a team, haven't done a huge amount, but then you look at the players they do have in Haaland and Odegaard, and we don't, I don't think we don't have anything comparable.
No, we certainly don't. We have very few players. I was only remarking on Sunday Sports on the weekend and looking at how few players we have etched across Premier League sides who are consistently starting. It is a bit of a worry. But I also think, you know, you mentioned a couple of the teams there, Raf, that could be involved in pot 1 or pot 2. We do need a bit of luck. We were desperately unlucky with the draw that we got last time out, and the teams that we had to play over the course of that group stage. We were almost out of it before a ball had been kicked. And you certainly need a bit of luck to draw maybe one of the lower ranked sides from pot 1 and from pot 2. So you would certainly fancy yourself a little bit more against a Norway than maybe some of those other sides. But yeah, the worry is that you can look at the current squad that we have and the lack of maybe quality playing, or lack of quality is maybe a little harsh, but lack of players playing at the top end of the Premier League or other leagues across Europe. That is a problem in itself, but the root of the problem is the lack of players that we're producing at a younger age and coming through the ranks, and that doesn't really seem to be changing anytime soon. There's definitely a couple of players within the 21s, 1 or 2, likes of an Andrew Moore, who can maybe make a step up, but I think we need to see a far more consistent flow of players coming through the domestic game, and that comes back to resources, and it comes back to facilities, and it comes back to a number of coaches that we have involved in the game. So there's only so much that the manager's going to be able to do with that senior squad today, but a favourable draw would certainly help our case there. And if you can build on, like I mentioned, the first half within the English game and try piece that together over a 90-minute performance, we can be competitive. We maybe don't have the the ability to be as expansive or as creative as we possibly can. But if we can get back to being difficult to beat, we can still cause teams a little bit of problems with some of the players that we have. So I think an element of realism is certainly needed, and to have realistic expectations of what this team is capable of. But we're all behind them. We would all like to see them, certainly win a couple of games over the course of the campaign, and coming back to winning games, a favourable draw would certainly help.
Yeah, and that being said, though, a lot of Irish goals over the weekend as well. Just coincidentally, Aaron Connolly getting his first for Sunderland, and then also some people probably would have seen it online. There was a great gesture he made to a Sunderland Sunderland supporter based, I think, in London or somewhere close to that, who's been having a bit of a tough time, and he made a very nice gesture. But that you can check out online. Adam Ida with a late brace for Celtic, Finn Azaz also with a brace for Middlesbrough as well. Jamie McGrath on target for Aberdeen, Mark McGuinness with a goal as well for Luton, and Tom Cannon scoring for Stoke. So there's a few little green shoots there, at least from a club perspective. But on the domestic front, Derry City, we've been talking about the situation there in terms of the Rory Higgins leaving, and I think when we were speaking last week, Paul, you were talking about where Derry City need to go towards, and at that stage we didn't know who the manager was. A few hours later they did actually do the announcement. It was Tiernan Lynch, the Larne manager, who I think we've gotten to know a little bit just through the Conference League when they came up against Shamrock Rovers. So he did his first press conference the following day, and let's just listen to that before we discuss further.
I fully believe that Derry City can be the biggest club on the island of Ireland, and I think that there's so much success can be brought here, both on the field and off the field, and it's a challenge that I'm absolutely utterly relishing. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's going to be easy. It's going to be definitely a difficult task, but it's a task that we're up for.
That is the new Derry City manager, Tiernan Lynch, and of course he's done brilliantly with Larne, leading to back-to-back titles, obviously with the backing of Kenny Bruce and Purple Bricks as well there, so that just needs to be added in as well. And then this season's been a little bit tricky, but the fact he's got them into Europe is a huge boon as well. So your thoughts on his appointment, Paul?
Yeah, it's probably one that people involved in the League of Ireland probably don't know a huge amount about Tiernan Lynch, but obviously somebody who's impressed the Derry board and the people who make decisions up there is somebody who can build upon what Rory has done over the last 3 years. So the foundations are good. I mean, the players are certainly there to at least challenge at the top end of the league. He's obviously going to have a little bit more transition maybe than maybe people might have expected with the likes of Colin Whelan, the McElhenney brothers. Kieran Call's gone out the door as well. So there's going to be a couple of players coming in and a couple of players going out, and maybe that presents an opportunity for him to bring in some of his own players who can put a little bit of a stamp on the squad. But I don't think you rip up the playbook there, Raf. I think you build on what Rory had done. Yes, some of the results weren't brilliant, particularly towards the end of the season. Some of the performances to go with it weren't good either, but he definitely had the foundations of a decent side who, won an FAI Cup and who didn't finish too far behind the league winners on 2 occasions. So it's exciting for Derry, somebody who's obviously done extremely well while at Larne and has really progressed that club, and maybe they see him as being the person who can kind of progress them to challenge a little bit more aggressively in the league. But Derry should, in my eyes anyway, it was one of the places I used to dread going up to because it was so intense. It was such a difficult environment to play within, and their game was always about being aggressive and being in your face. And I don't think Tiernan Lynch should get away from that. I think that should always be kind of like the heartbeat of Derry City, of being that front foot team. And I would imagine that he'll try to find players who can kind of fit into a system that would mirror that.
Yeah, and in other news, Bray Wanderers set to get an artificial all-weather pitch, so it'll be the 6th LOI ground to have one after Derry, Dundalk, Athlone Cove and Kerry, and the move is to facilitate all age grade sides to use the venue for training and other things as well. Maeve, just out of interest, because from your own time playing in Scandinavia, whether it was in Sweden or Norway, the use of all-weather pitches, was it just sort of like the norm over there?
Yeah, well, when I played in Norway, we had a grass pitch, home pitch, but we trained on Astro pretty much all the time. And in Sweden, the pitch was Astro, our training and match pitch. So yeah, it did become the norm just because of the weather, really. Obviously, there was we also had an indoor all weather as well that we used to train on too when the snow came down. But Yeah, for me, I prefer to play on grass. I think I don't know, it's just something, personal preference, I suppose. And even in terms of injuries, I think it can be difficult to be playing in all weather all the time. It's a lot harder on the body, I think. And just, I suppose, when you're used to growing up playing soccer on grass, that's kind of what you can tend to prefer. But excuse me, I can definitely see the benefits as well, though, of having AstroTurf. Like sometimes just games wouldn't go ahead if they're on grass, or even in terms of training facilities, like Drum here, Salted Devon, like they've one of the best facilities, but they do have a mix of grass and all weather available. But definitely they get a lot of use out of all weather pitches. But I think, yeah, sometimes when you see games and played on them, I think it can have a real impact on the game too. Obviously, the Women's League at Lone play on the all-weather pitch at Lone Town Stadium, and a lot of teams hate playing there just because they're not used to it. And sometimes different pitches the Astro can be, there's different speed and different bounce off a lot of the pitches, so it does take some getting used to. And yeah, it's not always the player's preference, I think, to play on.
Yeah, for sure. And I suppose Shamrock Rovers as well, it's another Conference League week for them. So Thursday they're going away to play against Rapid Vienna at the Allianz Stadion in Vienna. And this is, of course, in the Conference League phase. And we know that after beating TNS before the international break, that they have more than a 90% shot of at least reaching the playoff round. So they're virtually there, and pretty much everything they would have wanted to tick off in those first three games, they have kind of ticked off in that sense. Now, Rapid Vienna currently second in the Austrian Bundesliga, but they drew 0-0 with WSG Tirol and almost reached the Europa League phase back in the summer as well. So they're obviously going to be potent, and they've won their first three games in this Conference League competition in the league phase so far, beating Istanbul Başakşehir 2-1 away from home, FC Noah 1-0 at home, and then Petro Kub Hinichesti of Moldova 3-0 away from home. So Paul, I suppose this is going to just be a free hit for Shamrock Rovers in a certain sense, given they're going to be underdogs going there, and the fact that Rapid Vienna are strong as well, but still could pack a bit of a punch too.
Yeah, they could, and they finished the season very strong, both domestically and with the results in the Conference League. But you would imagine that this is going to be a significant step up on the games that they played against, particularly Larne and TNS, and I would say even a step up on Applewell as a team to play against. And obviously when you go on the road in Europe as well, it becomes just a little bit more difficult. But I'm sure Stephen Bradley, like they've played a number of teams of this sort of mold over the last couple of seasons when they've played in Europe, and they know exactly maybe what is expected of them when they go and play against a team like Rapid Vienna. They're not going to have the same sort of ownership of possession that they might do when they play a TNS or a Larne. And it's more about, being disciplined, being structured within your shape, and then hope when you do regain possession that maybe you can transition and go quickly, and you can use the likes of a Neil Farouj who can kind of get you up the pitch, or Johnny Kenny who can stretch in behind and carry a bit of a threat from that perspective. So it's a game that, listen, they'll be very realistic about their opportunities because Rapid Vienna is such a good side, but they will also understand that, they can have confidence in the fact that they carry a threat at the top end of the pitch. And obviously the results that they've had already within this competition puts them in an unbelievable position to try qualify, not only out of the league phase, but maybe as one of the automatic qualifiers. But the next two away games are very, very difficult. Rapid Vienna and Chelsea. And then they obviously have that game against Borach at home on the 12th of December that maybe presents their best opportunity of picking up points again. But it's brilliant to have them involved in the competition. It's brilliant that we're not only talking about them being involved, but actually competing and potentially qualifying out of the league phase. So Stephen Bradley will be very understanding of the challenge that exists on Thursday evening. But really, I think they'll go into this with a bit of confidence that they can pose at least a bit of a threat.
Yeah, you plan to head over to the Chelsea game?
I was thinking about it. It's very close to Christmas.
It is very, very close.
A lot of challenges from a pricing perspective and tickets. Maybe a situation that I monitor, but I'm sure Shamrock Rovers will be hoping that they don't end up on the same sort of thumping that Chelsea gave Noah when they beat them 8-0. So that will probably send a couple of alarm bells, and Chelsea going pretty well over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and of course, Champions League, Chelsea are not in that. They're going to be in they're obviously in the Conference League, but Liverpool and against Real Madrid is live on RT2 and the RT Player on Wednesday. So coverage from 7:30 on either of those channels, whether you're watching on TV or streaming. And it's interesting from a Liverpool point of view. They were made to work hard against Southampton at the weekend, but sort of got through it. We'll talk about Mo Salah and his future because he had quite a lot to say at the weekend. But I suppose, Paul, from a Real Madrid point of view, they've actually been very shaky this season. They did win 3-0 at Leganés and Mbappe scored, Vinicius setting him up, but they are very out of sorts. And it feels like maybe his signing may have been, that phrase we go back to, too many cooks. And maybe he's a big chef, but it's too many of them.
Yeah, maybe. I think it was always going to take a bit of time, Raf, for that relationship to build, particularly between Rodrigo, Vinicius, and Mbappe. And Mbappe was on the score sheet last night, and it was set up from Vinicius Junior. So maybe that will start to give them a bit more confidence going forward. But there's been some really, really poor results. I mean, I watched the Barcelona game where Barcelona absolutely pumped them that night, and it genuinely could have been more. And then obviously the game at home when they played Real Madrid in the Champions League, they were far from, I guess, decent within that performance. They looked really open at the back. Militao was obviously gone and done his cruciate ligament again, who seems to be such a pillar for them with Rudiger at the back.
And,
so
and outside of those, there seems to be a huge amount of injuries. Other than Alaba has been out for however long. He's a brilliant defender, and the other one, their captain Carvajal, did his knee as well. So again, another long-term absentee, and that's an area of the pitch where I know they're talking about trying to get Trent Alexander-Arnold in the longer term, maybe in the summer if he does go on a free transfer. But that seems to have hit them hard, whereas they're maybe overly stocked at the other end of the pitch.
Yeah, and probably another player that you can mention there who's gone out of the building is Tony Cruz. So when you start taking, you see with Man City now, when they lose a couple of really important bodies, the impact that it has on the performances, and that's probably the same is true with Real Madrid. But I remember watching Real Madrid in the Champions League probably about this time last year and the year before, and they never really, flatter within some of the performances. They're very similar to a Man City where it's as if the engine only starts to rev after Christmas and they start to pick up a bit of momentum. But this game against Liverpool carries quite a lot of importance, Raf, because they have started this competition so poorly that they probably have a bit of ground that they need to make up within this league phase. They certainly sit 18th out of the 36 teams, and they have a couple of difficult fixtures, Liverpool being one of them. So I'm sure Ancelotti will start to look for a little bit more from his players, even without missing the likes of your Carvajals and Militaos. It'll be a brilliant game to watch. Liverpool weren't exactly fantastic against Southampton, but I guess what you do always carry with Liverpool is goals and attacking threat, and the players that they have gone forward are so exciting, as do Real Madrid. So it should be an open game. It should be a brilliant watch. And given the fact that Real Madrid have a little bit more pressure on them, it should be a really competitive game.
And in terms of Salah's future, so there are 3 players that are out of contract at the end of the season. So Trent Alexander-Arnold, who we mentioned, it'd be a blow to lose him, especially given he's a Merseysider, has come through the club, etc. And then Van Dijk, but there seems to have been some talks in regards to him, so maybe he will end up staying on. And then Mo Salah, who has said that he's more out than in, and their contract talks haven't started. Doesn't mean that they won't happen and that he won't stay on, but given their policy with players over the age of 30, it's not quite clear. But what we saw at the weekend is he just has that nose for goal. There's something quite natural about it. Like, if you're looking at it, trying to take in the long term, the short term, what's your sort of decision making in terms of Salah, given he's on a huge salary as well?
I think it's a player that Liverpool can't afford to lose. And if you're talking about Salah, Van Dijk and Trent Alexander-Arnold, they need to keep at a minimum, you would think, 2 of those 3 within the squad if Arne Slot is to build on the good start that he's had. But Salah carries such a huge threat at the top end of the pitch. He doesn't always need to be overly involved in the game. He's one of those players who can kind of spring and have moments within games, and those moments typically lead to goals. And he's been such a massive threat for Liverpool over a huge number of seasons. I also understand it from the club's perspective. You would imagine that Salah's representatives want massive money, which he absolutely deserves given what he's done for the club, but they probably want it for 3 years, and maybe the club are looking at it and looking at similar situations with other clubs where they've put players who are over the age of 30 on massive money and have seen performances drop substantially over maybe the remaining years of their contract. But listen, Arne Slot will want him at the club. Liverpool will want to keep Salah. It would ultimately come down to whether or not they can afford to give him the figures that he wants for the period of time that he believes he should be granted. But like the physical condition he's in, Raf, the speed that he has, the power, he doesn't look like he's slowing down anytime soon. It doesn't look like the goals are slowing down. He's probably tweaked his game even a little bit more as he's become more experienced with just having a knack of getting into goal scoring positions. But it'll ultimately come down to money, and you could imagine the money that is being thrown at him from Saudi Arabia and that option. Maybe he's probably too young to go to that league right now, but sometimes it does come down to finances. You heard Kevin De Bruyne talking about, it might be too good to turn down. But the narrative he put out in the weekend, this happens, agents probably saying, make it known that you haven't received an offer. I don't think that is to say that an offer won't come, but it's definitely a player that I want to keep in the building.
Yeah, for sure. And that will be the whole Salah situation. That's kind of an enviable thing from a Manchester United point of view. They'd wish that's the type of problems they had, whether they keep a star player or not. And Ruben Amorim's debut as manager was yesterday afternoon. Man United drawing 1-1 at Ipswich. And it all started so well. Peter Drury's commentary about Rashford's opener being utopian, a launch of the most staggering type that was bellowed out, and that this was going to be the start to a great era. Obviously, the 88 minutes that followed just showed how much work Amorim will have to do to try and turn the ship around.
Yeah, exactly. It was a great start that I think we were all maybe got a bit carried away, and then obviously just before half time reality hit again, and back to going in level. And yeah, even though like the second half, I think United had about 70% possession, and it's frustrating watching them not been able to it's just a lack of quality really. Like I don't think there's much else to be said, like in terms of I think they've become just an average team. And I know, we hope that I hope as a fan they get back to the top end of the table, but it just doesn't look realistic with the players they have, and the lack of quality. Like there's just no standout stars at the moment, and I guess we do have to give him time and patience, but it's something, when you're watching on and you're used to a team winning for so many years, that it's hard, and it is frustrating. Ipswich, they just they got the job. Well, they got the job done as much as they could, but yeah, United just couldn't find the back of the net in the second half. And Onana, like he had a lot of saves to make, and although it can be a positive thing at times, just shows how much Ipswich they created chances too. And yeah, we were on the back foot at times, and I think he's going to have his work cut out for sure.
Yeah, and Pep Guardiola, of course, confirmed last week that he's going to be staying on, signing a new deal. Given there was speculation he might move on, Paul, but he also has a little bit of work, not quite to the Manchester United extent, but they've just hit the skids a little bit. 5 defeats in a row in all competitions. And is it a sense, are you looking at and just thinking maybe, is it a collective drop off, or do you feel maybe it's the Rodri injury, and then coupled with Kovacic, who would be filling in that space, also being out for a little while, that's sort of playing a part in their drop off in terms of results?
Yeah, Rodri's definitely a massive part of that, Raf, and you can see that within their play, both with and without the ball. And if you think back to some of Tottenham's goals, it seems to be on transitions, and it seems to be that teams are opening them up a little bit easier, and Man City don't be able to track runners or shut off spaces. And a lot of that does come down to Rodri. His kind of instinct to play that pivot role is maybe one that goes a little bit under the radar. Maybe fans don't totally appreciate the job he does until you take him out of the side. But coupled with that is like John Stones has been missing, and he's been in and out of the side with injury. Kyle Walker's probably been rushed back from injury. Nathan Ake's been out. Ruben Diaz has been out. So those players are probably not up to the usual sort of levels that you expect from Man City, and they're conceding a huge number of goals. I mean, it was 4 against Tottenham, and it was 4 against Sporting Lisbon as well. And I think if you're talking about how they start to improve, it's defensively they need to be a little bit better. And people are probably surprised that Guardiola hasn't maybe tinkered the system to actually, support the Rodri injury. So often you see him making tweaks and changes when they lose personnel. He hasn't been able to, I guess, find that transition just yet. Like he's tried Rico Lewis in there. He's tried Kovacic. They've both done okay, but they're just not Rodri. But I think even like within the Tottenham game, Raf, there was a couple of chances earlier on within that game, and you feel like as if Haaland takes one or both of those chances, City go ahead and City are in cruise control, and they go on and win that game. So I wouldn't be too worried just yet. I know the run of form is a little bit worrying, but I think particularly when you look after Liverpool, the run of fixtures they have, I don't think there's too many games there where they'll drop points. And the games they have dropped points in have been difficult enough games. So a lot of people are talking about if Liverpool win on Sunday that the league is done and dusted. I don't see it that way. I really don't. I think the Premier League is so competitive now. Man City have shown previously that they can put, your 10, 15, 20 game unbeaten run behind them. Arsenal look good on the weekend as well. So yes, there are concerns with Man City. I think the physicality within the middle of the park is a problem. I think letting somebody like Julian Alvarez out of the building in the summer is probably a bigger hole than people are maybe giving a credit to. But they're still not far off getting back to winning ways. When they do that, you would expect they go through the gears again.
Yeah, and of course Liverpool under Klopp and obviously Arsenal the last couple of seasons can tell you that he can stretch a gap for a while, but once City get motoring, they generally reel in teams and then pip them at the end. So it's very early days at this stage. But anyway, that's it for this week's podcast. Of course, the Women's Euro 2025 playoff first leg is going to be on RT2 and the RT player from 6:30 on Friday, and also on Game On RT2 FM in terms of the radio as well. So we'll be reviewing the tie on next week's podcast. I'm going to be away myself, so to listeners and regular viewers and all that, so an early Merry Christmas and also Happy New Year. I'll see you on the other side in 2025 when hopefully the weather starts brightening up a little bit. But Paul and Méabh, thanks a mil for joining me this week.
Thanks.
Cheers, Raf.